expected that. I have carried a cherished secret in my bosom for now some 30 years or more.
He said, stop wasting people's time. Why don't you go out and get yourself a job as a dishwasher or something?
I accept this award in memory of all the African American actors and actresses who went before me in the difficult years.
Sidney Poitier, the man who changed the world with dignity. There are lives that do not simply pass through history. There are lives that bend it. Sidney Poitier's story begins far from Hollywood's golden lights, on a small island called Cat Island in the Bahamas, where the sea was wide and the nights were silent. His parents, Reginald and Evelyn Poitier, were humble tomato farmers, people of the earth, living without electricity, without running water, but rich in courage and love. They worked the soil with their hands, and they taught their children that a man's worth was not measured by wealth, but by character. It was there that destiny began to shape the boy who would one day move mountains. In 1927, during a trip to Miami to sell their crops, Evelyn gave birth prematurely. That baby, born 2 months early in a foreign hospital, would become an American citizen by accident and a citizen of the world by purpose. His name was Sidney Poitier. He grew up barefoot under the sun, curious, restless, and full of questions. He left school early to help his family, and for years his universe was no bigger than the horizon of the sea. But at 15 years old, his parents sent him to Miami, hoping he would find opportunity. Instead, he found a world divided by color. He met racism for the first time, the cold, silent kind that wounds without sound. But even then, he refused to hate. At 16 years old, with barely $3 in his pocket, he traveled alone to New York City. The city swallowed him. Harsh winters, endless noise, hunger, rejection. He slept in bus terminals, washed dishes to survive, and sometimes wondered if life had simply forgotten him. But inside him burned something unbreakable, a belief that there had to be more. One day, passing by a poster for the American Negro Theatre, he decided to audition. He could barely read the script. His accent was heavy, his nerves raw. The audience laughed. The director told him to go wash dishes, something he was already doing to eat. But humiliation didn't defeat him, it taught him. That night, he bought a newspaper, and though he could barely read, he started teaching himself, word by word, line by line, every night after work. He listened to radio announcers, repeating their voices, their rhythm, their pronunciation. He taught himself English as if it were a song. Are you enjoying this story, Sidney Poitier? Then help the channel with your subscription. Look, 94.8% of the people who watch these videos are still not subscribed to the channel. If you are part of that group, take the chance and subscribe now. It's free, and that way you'll keep receiving amazing stories from TV shows we still miss. Oh, and don't forget, at the end of the video, you'll find more stories like this one. Months later, he returned to the theater. This time, he read clearly. This time, they did not laugh. And this time, he was chosen. That moment changed everything. No one knew it yet, but cinema had just found a new language, the language of dignity. From the stage to the screen, Sidney Poitier's rise was slow but unstoppable. He wasn't loud or flashy, he was true. He didn't act to impress, he acted to reveal the soul of a man. In 1950, he appeared in No Way Out, playing a young black doctor who treats a racist white criminal. It was daring, dangerous, and decades ahead of its time. For audiences unused to seeing a black man with authority and intellect, Poitier's calm strength was revolutionary. He didn't shout his defiance, he embodied it. Hollywood didn't quite know what to do with him. The system had roles for black actors, servants, clowns, shadows. Sidney refused them all. He would rather starve than surrender his integrity. And for a time, he nearly did. Then came 1958 and the Defiant Ones. A film about two escaped prisoners, one black, one white, chained together, forced to survive side by side. Sidney's performance was electric. The Academy took notice. He became the first black man ever nominated for Best Actor. But more important than the nomination was the image. A black man and a white man bound together, running, fighting, learning to trust each other. The symbolism was unmistakable. 5 years later, he would do what no one before him had done.
In 1963, in a quiet, gradient film called Lilies of the Field, he played Homer Smith, a wandering worker who helps a group of nuns build a chapel in the desert. It was a role about faith, humility, and decency. And in 1964, Sidney Poitier walked onto the stage of the Academy Awards and became the first black man in history to win the Oscar for Best Actor. The audience stood. The applause rolled like thunder. But Poitier, ever calm, simply smiled and said a few grateful words. He didn't need to speak of revolution. He was one. In that moment, under the bright lights of a still segregated America, he redefined what was possible. For millions watching, that golden statue was more than an award. It was a mirror, finally reflecting them. The years that followed were his golden era. He chose his roles carefully, each one a statement, each one a stand. In the heat of the night, To Sir with Love, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner? 3 films in a single year, 1967, that shattered stereotypes and silenced critics. He played teachers, detectives, doctors, men of strength and grace. In a world that told him, "You can't," Sidney Poitier quietly replied, "Watch me." But even as he rose, the weight grew heavier. He felt the burden of representation, as if the hopes of an entire race lived in his every gesture. White America saw him as a symbol of calm, respectable progress. Some in the black community saw him as too polished, too accommodating, not angry enough. He was trapped between 2 expectations, yet he remained himself. He once said, "I felt as if I were representing 15 or 18 million people with every move I made." The truth was, he wasn't trying to please anyone. He was trying to show that dignity could be revolutionary. Behind the fame, there were shadows too. During his first marriage to Juanita Hardy, he fell in love with actress Diane Carroll. Their affair lasted nearly 9 years, passionate, complicated, hidden from public eyes. When revealed later, it became the only real scandal of his life, not of disgrace, but of human weakness. He handled it quietly, respectfully, without spectacle. Even in imperfection, Poitier carried himself with restraint and truth. As time went on, he moved behind the camera, directing, producing, creating opportunities for others. He helmed Buck in The Preacher, Uptown Saturday Night, Stir Crazy, proving that his vision reached beyond acting. And later he turned to diplomacy, serving as Bahamian ambassador to Japan and UNESCO representative, carrying the same dignity that had guided him on screen. Recognition came, one honor after another. In 2002, the Academy gave him an honorary Oscar for Lifetime Achievement, a tribute to a man who had not just entertained, but enlightened the world. In 2009, President Barack Obama placed the Presidential Medal of Freedom around his neck, calling him a beacon of dignity and grace that illuminated generations. He smiled that same calm, knowing smile, the one that had carried him from a tomato farm to the world's grandest stages. And as age crept in, even as his memory faded and his body slowed, his light did not. He faced illness, Alzheimer's disease, prostate cancer, with the same quiet courage he brought to every role. On January 6, 2022, Sidney Poitier passed away at his home in Beverly Hills, California. He was 94 years old. The news rippled across the world, not with shock, but with reverence. People did not mourn him as a celebrity lost, but as a moral compass, a bridge, a proof that art could change hearts. Because Sidney Poitier wasn't just the first black man to win an Oscar. He was the first to demand that Hollywood and America look at him, not as a stereotype, not as a token, but as a man. He changed the way millions saw themselves. He turned barriers into doorways. And he did it not with fury or force, but with decency, discipline, and undeniable grace. Even now, his legacy echoes in every actor of color who dares to dream, in every film that tells the truth with beauty, in every child who watches the screen and whispers, "If he could, maybe I can too." Sidney Poitier's life was not just a success story. It was a testament, a reminder that greatness is not measured by applause, but by the dignity with which we face the world. He once said, "I chose to represent what did not yet exist in American cinema, the black man as a full human being." And that is exactly what he did. He stood tall when the world tried to shrink him. He smiled when it would have been easier to rage. He believed when it would have been safer to doubt. And in doing so, he became more than an actor. He became a symbol of what humanity could be when it chooses courage over fear. So remember his journey. A boy from a farm on a tiny island, who washed dishes in the dark of night, who taught himself to read from a newspaper, who lifted an entire people simply by refusing to bow. Sidney Poitier, the man who changed the world, not through power or politics, but through dignity. If this story touched your heart, if you believe that true greatness always comes with a price, then don't let it end here. Subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next story behind the legends of Hollywood. Stories of courage, fame, loss, and the light that never fades. Because every star has a story, and the next one might just change the way you see the world.